Una clack, it's a clack. Organized. Buongiorno, buongiorno a tutti. Morning, everybody. Welcome to this press conference, annual press conference during the festival, to celebrate the success of the Venice Immersive section. I'm very grateful. I'm here to say that I'm really very grateful for the wonderful job that Liz and Michelle do every year to put together a wonderful selection of projects and increasing the level and the success of this international competition for VR. But I give the floor immediately to them because they have something to tell you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Alberto.
Thank you, Alberto. I think one of the first things we want to say about this year's edition, this is our 7th edition. We feel that we have moved up a step. We feel that we have gone through the first 6 years of designing, conceiving, exploring what it means to do a festival like this one, a competitive section in one of the 2 or 3 most prestigious A-list film festivals in the world. And we have tried different things, we have explored different ideas, and this year, for us at least, there's a very strong feeling that we are starting to reap the benefits, what we have explored and planted. We have a feeling that there's a greater awareness, particularly from the film world, about the immersive as an art form and not just as a technical innovation. We have been seeing a wider circle of people who were not directly involved in immersive coming to the island, discovering what you do. And we had remarks like, oh my God, why have I waited so long to come here? This is where it's happening. So this is a new vibe, and it's extremely encouraging because it allows us to offer you, the makers, to offer you a platform that is hopefully each year better. And so I would really say this as a main point, is that we have stepped into a new chapter, a bigger one, with an attention of the press, of the media, which is remarkable. We have had coverage that we didn't have the other years, and coverage that is talking about your works, about the works that you do, and not just the idea, oh, it's so nice to do something about immersive, but nothing on the works. We have been seeing more articles about the content, and we feel that if the press is now interested enough to cover what we do, the content, and talk about it, and review it, and be critics, just like there are film critics, I think this is an essential thing that we need, and it's amazing to see it starting to happen.
And I think in terms of, not just in terms of how the audience is engaging at the festival, we're seeing a huge maturation, really, of the immersive art and entertainment forms. And I think our selection really demonstrates that now the different forms that make up immersive arts and media are really maturing in terms of their creativity and also their awareness of markets. So we're seeing maturity now in terms of the kind of creators we have here. Of course, we have many new creators who we are so happy to welcome, but many returning directors who are really maturing in terms of who they are as directors. And also, I think in terms of the awareness of the importance of sustaining a market, a lot of the makers are becoming much more aware of the fact they have to engage with audiences and distribute their work. So there are several trends we're seeing in terms of what the selection is. So I think one of the main things that we are really excited about is the social aspect of immersive media. And we're seeing, obviously, Michelle and I have been passionate about social VR over the last few years since the COVID pandemic. We've been very much, we've held the festival in social platforms, but now over the last 3 years, we have a dedicated section called The Worlds, where we're displaying what that means in terms of new form of art. And also we're starting to see projects that are multiplayer, that are really thinking about how they're going to reach many, multiple audiences, and that's really heartening, I think, in terms of that.
Yeah. I think, on your last point, Liz, this is something that we have been discussing with a lot of the people who attended the market, which has been incredibly successful this year again, but yet again with another step. This is the awareness of trying to adapt some of the formats of the work when it's possible to what actually the public reacts to. For instance, we know today that what works in terms of motivating the audience is social, absolutely. It is sharing an experience together with other people in a virtual environment. These learnings are absolutely key because they will help us, they will help you as maker, us as festivals. It will help us tailor the work in such a way that it can have a longer life than just a festival life, because we know that one of the big issues with the budding market of immersive is that distribution is very tough, and the networks, where the work can be seen is just starting to structure itself. So this is very interesting to see that we have moved on from a sort of a research and development type of frame of mind, and now we're moving into a place where mostly the producers are aware of how they can tailor, adapt the creativity of the makers to make it suitable for a market. And we think it's very, very important.
And I think at Venice we feel also a responsibility to help grow the ecosystem. And that's very much, we're involved in immersive media in different parts of the ecosystem. So, for example, in the Biennale, College VR is our development part of where we get involved in the development stage of immersive media. And then the marketplace is where we're helping projects find their finance and meet different partners. And then obviously Venice Immersive, which we're talking about at this press conference, is where they are launched and where we hope they're going to find further distribution. So we also this year, in relation to talking about the marketplace, held a closed think tank that we feel is incredibly important to start the conversation about how we sustain that part of the ecosystem. So what I think is really great is the fact that our projects are almost ready to go into the next stage, the next evolution of the system.
I would like, I don't want to cut you off. I just would like to say, because I don't think we have that much time, I would like to say two things. One, the first thing regarding the media and the press. We have now the luck and the luxury to have passionate, how can I say, defendants of VR in the press. We have here Federica Polidoro, we have Damiano from the Hollywood Reporter, all of you met Kent By. These are people that we didn't have before, and these people help us because they're just as passionate as you and as us. And this is really something that has grown out of doing what we do. So I want to thank those journalists who are with us in fighting for the art form to grow and to be seen. The second thing I wanted to say as something we all need to be aware of is that the Venice Immersive could not exist if the Biennale didn't trust that it was a long-term bet. And Alberto, you have been with us from the very, very beginning and just trusting us blindly almost and saying, yes, I believe that this is part of the future. But I don't think there's any other place in the world where we could do this, because it's in the DNA of the Biennale to be multidisciplinary. And there's the Art Biennale, the Architecture Biennale, but there's also, and of course the Film Festival, but there's also a Dance Biennale, a Music Biennale, a Theater Biennale, and then there's the college. So there's something that is so unique to this organization that we tend to forget it, and we do not always perceive the magnitude of the cultural impact that the Biennale has. But this can happen, and we can do this section, this competitive section, within the frame of the festival, because Roberto Cicuto, the president, are men of, you are risk takers, and this is so rare.
Thank you. No, thank you very much indeed. It's true. I mean, this is our job. This is our aim. This is our commitment. No, so I don't think we took some risks, of course, at the beginning, because it was really the very early stage of an art form that it didn't exist at that time. So, and we believed that we believed in you. We trusted you when you told us that this could become something very important, and we took the risk, and we are happy to see that the result and the success of the section is here to recompense our investment, our efforts, your efforts, yes, thank you. So.
And I think on the island, on Venice Immersive, it's a real representation of all of those different formats and art forms that you talked about, Michelle. And I think that's what is really unique about the Biennale, is that in a way that reflects in Venice Immersive, because immersive media is so many things that are coming together. Yes. And it's incredible that you took the risk in the film festival to bring all these art forms of real-life performance, visual arts, filmmaking, and then the technology that's changing storytelling together. And that's how we see what we're representing, really, in terms of the creative forms that are developing, because it involves all of these different types of media. And I think seeing, such a variety of different creative talent here, we are really representing in our program everything that immersive media means across all the different forms.
Definitely. Do we have a few more minutes?
Oh, sure. Is there any questions? Because it is a press conference, so it's not a panel, so. Yes, over there.
I was curious about the selection of the works, because it's very various from mixed realities, virtual realities, so there is a lot of different kinds of work. So I was curious to know what are the criteria you use for this selection?
That's a question that many people ask us. And in fact, because it's such a nascent form, immersive media, Michelle and I are trying to show the wide spectrum of what that means. We don't decide on a particular format that we're going to cover, or a theme or a genre. We're trying to show that this is a really wide area. So our program is really the story of what that means in terms of the different forms that you mentioned, and also the different types of experiences that you can have across these formats. So we don't, we are looking very, very wide, and we want to be a representation of creative excellence across all these different forms and genres.
I think the process is a simple one. We have a submission call which starts in February and ends at the end of May. Through this process, we receive hundreds of submissions, and the whole year, Liz and I, we travel, we talk with makers, and we track projects that might be ready for us and that the producers might want to submit to us. So all in all, probably we see around 350 different works, out of which we select maximum 30 for the competition, so it's 1 in 10. But the selection sort of shapes itself as we go, because we watch everything. And
in 3 weeks.
In 3 weeks, so that means we spend 8 to 9 hours a day during 3 weeks, every day, in the different headsets. We're quite zombies when we finish this. But little by little, we sort of have a short list of maybe about 50 titles that make the short list. And then in the end, we look at that short list and see what it says. By the nature of what has been offered, what has been done during the year. And it's only at the end when, from that short list, we make the choice of the 30 projects that we're going to show, that then we can say what trends there are. For instance, this year, there was much less performance-based projects, for instance. Then in terms of countries, all of a sudden this year, there were tons of projects from the Netherlands or from Korea. And last year, it was tons of projects from Taiwan. This year, there was less. So it's impossible to predict, and I think our job is to reflect the state of the moment in this art form. Does that answer your question? I would like to ask something else I don't want to forget to say, which is maybe a deeper happening as we go. There's something incredibly generous and beautiful in the community that we are, because there's no money for the moment. That may be one reason, not the only one, but what strikes me is that year after year, we see how much the people who work in the field of immersive are sharing, are supportive of each other, are trying their best to find ways to help their colleagues, to apply every way to really activate the sense of community. Svetlana and Valery, who are here, were the winners of this year College VR. I think you had everyone from the college who came to support you and to help you. And and I see it among yourselves, I mean, among the makers. It's almost as if we were the exact counter-proposal to where the world is going today. With broken societies, broken political systems, war, walls being built. I mean, all of this that is excluding, that is polarizing. And we have this incredible privilege that in this community that we're actually supportive of each other, understanding of each other in an incredible diversity of styles and genres. And the spirit, I don't know if you would agree, but to us, the spirit on the island for this first half of the festival has been unbelievable. I mean, it's been incredible to see how open-minded and generous people, all of you, were and are. And so this is, I think, the thing that almost moves me the most. There are the works that you do. There are all the discussions and the meetings and the market. But all of that is done within an ethos that is so generous that it's almost, sometimes I feel like we are a utopian society, utopian model for how the world could be if everyone was like the immersive community. There would be no problem. Everything would be solved.
Apart from the plumbing.
Okay, we still have 5 minutes, so if there is any other question. Yes. Wait for the mic.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a question. So we came with an installation called Peuplé, and I wanted to ask if you want to open as an advice for future artists like us that do a different type of form of expression that the timeline of the festival, the dates, and the time to build such installation. And we know many artists that are very talented that could also be proposing their art piece at Biennale. But the timeline we kind of see and observe that there is a blending coming from cinema, going to VR, and going to installation. We kind of feel that. And the timeline of the movie and the timeline of an installation are very different. Do you think that in the future, those dates of validations and everything can think about other kind of projects and formats?
So I think because Maya represents a project called Purpley, which was our most complex installation piece, and they had a very tight time to build and arrive and set up everything, and it was very, very precise technology. It's very, very tough for installations because we're building a very complex exhibition, and the Biennale is an incredible team. The team we have, we're so lucky. They build impossible things in a couple of weeks, and we turn up on the island. I was there, I think, 8 days before, and then the next day, suddenly everything's changed. It's incredible. Suddenly there's a new structure that's been built, and it takes, I know in London it takes about 3 months to build one wall, and here the Biennale team has built several, houses. But it is very difficult, and it's something that Michelle and I are discuss with you about maybe having some more time in terms of the submission date. The nature of festivals is that we are annual, and that we have to have our, that we start our submission process in February, and we have to allow, we're showing premieres of work, and that's something that's very important as well, that Venice is a representation of how this evolving form is changing, and we're kind of now, because we have a premiere status for the competition, we have new projects arriving, so we want to make sure that we're going to be able to include those new projects within give them a year. But we are thinking of trying to move the dates slightly because it's very difficult in terms of finishing these works because they are so different from cinema works, and especially for the installation pieces. Thank you.
Any other questions, remarks? Yes, here.
Maybe in future, can we expect that it can be the online platform that like participants of Biennale or college Biennale can see the works who win in the previous year, because it's incredible experience for all our industry. It's very important to see what people do, how they grow, and how the industry is different, because all people who are in VR industry but not cinema industry, they even unexpected that so grateful projects now at Biennale, and they can be making a great impact to all VR industry.
It's a very tricky question because, as we said, the distribution of works is just beginning. And when during the 2 COVID years, we were online, and the festival was online, and we had a network of 15 satellites, which were physical venues in 15 different cities in the world, where people could come and watch the pieces physically. It was a big success, and after that, everybody asked, can we continue this? Those 15 cities and venues wanted to continue partner with the Biennale to show the work, and that we would keep the platform. We have decided against it because we realized that it was against the interest of the makers themselves, because if we want to start growing a distribution market where you can start generating income from the distribution of your works, you need to be able to charge, which is completely fair, for selling, or licensing the work. And if we start enlarging or augmenting the audience of Venice Immersive beyond the people who come to Venice, then we start infringing on that distribution potential. So it was a long discussion for us, And we decided that it was not our role to, that we're not driven by a logic of expanding our viewership. Everything that the Biennale does, how old is the Biennale? 120 years, something like that?
The first edition of the Biennale was 1895.
85?
95.
1905, so it's 130.
100 and yeah.
Yeah, 130 years. In the 130 years of the history of the Biennale, everything has always been in Venice and only in Venice. And there's this philosophy that there's a very highly valuable event value attached to anything that the Biennale does. So yes, it means you need to make an effort. Yes, it costs a lot of money to come, but that's your only chance. And this is our role. We are an antechamber. We are a launch platform. We are not a market, and it's not our role to expand our audience. I mean, it's just not the role of a festival. So we decided we do everything we can to expand the audience locally, physically, during the 10 days of the festival. But once the festival is done, each piece becomes its own master, of course, and then decides that we do not want to break. That was an issue with the 15 venues for the satellites in the COVID years, because it was a lot of money for these venues to set up the presentation of the selection of Venice, but there was no payment to the producers and to the artists, because it was too expensive, and it was part of Venice, and it was the only place. So that replaced our audience in Venice. But several producers came to us and say, well, where is my money? You know, because you're showing it in venues that I could sell it. The Phi Center was a satellite. The Phi Center is a major option for distribution. So if your piece is shown for free in a place like this, it's not going to buy it afterwards. So that's lost. So it's 15 venues lost. That was the case for this. But it's the same sort of logic for us not promoting an online access.
And I think that, it's very special during COVID years, but just to summarize, at Venice, we have created a market, and the fact that we're back now in Venice, we have the Venice Production Bridge, and we have many financiers and distributors and exhibitors coming here who can meet your projects and find distribution. It was a very special time then. And now, because it's become such a big platform, Venice, we're the largest immersive arts and entertainment exhibition annually. We are getting many people with different platforms, both online and at home, and exhibition and in venues coming to Venice. So we hope you will find the opportunity here.
Time is expired. I'm sorry. Thank you so much indeed, and enjoy the rest of the festival, of course. And thank you.
Thank you
again.
Thank you
for
very
what
much.
you have done.
Non c'è microfono. Ah sì, eccolo. Buongiorno, siamo qua per la conferenza stampa del nostro film fuori concorso Opus. Prima di cominciare con le domande, vi presento agli ospiti al nostro tavolo. Aiko RYUICHI, il produttore, il regista del film Neo Sora, il direttore della fotografia Bill Kirsten. And I am going to start with a question for Neo.
Sure.
When was the decision made by Sakamoto to make a film about a final performance?
I don't really remember exactly when the decision was made, but he wanted to do something after this one concert in 2020, in which he did a streaming concert, and then following that he wanted to do one more, but his health was declining, and so in 2022 they decided to do one final performance.
In the press note, there is an interesting line in Sakamoto's statement. He says that director Neo Sora was very strict. He wanted me to have the list of the pieces for the concert way in advance. Why did you want that list so early? And tell a little bit about the interaction when you two were preparing for the film.
Sure. In the past, I don't think he nor his team has ever made a concert film before. He's made concerts and people have filmed them, but a film is a completely different thing in which you have to prepare very meticulously for, so that you can capture the kind of ephemeral moments that happen in front of the screen or in front of the camera. And the only way I know how to make something is by kind of I'm a fiction filmmaker, and so film, and in order to do so, to prepare all the kind of ideas for the lighting and the camera work and all these other things, we needed to make sure that we were really prepared. And so I asked, which was something that they'd never really done before, but to come up with a set list very, very early in advance, and to stick with that set list, because I think usually he would change the set list every so often.
You raise your hand if you have a question. There's a question here. Yeah.
すいません、日本語で質問させてください。昨晩見させていただいてとても美しくて説明が省かれていたその白黒の映像っていうのがとても心に残りました。で、今回作品に臨まれるにあたって最後になるかもしれないパフォーマンスの芸術家を撮るという時にどういうふうな心境で撮影に臨まれたのかちょっと教えていただけますでしょうか。あと今回こういう形でベネチア国際映画祭で上映されるということについてどのように今感じていられるのか教えてください。
I suppose I'll answer in English.
Yes, in English, please.
So the first question was about how I felt going into the shooting, knowing that it could be his last performance. Of course, when we began the shooting, there was no way to really know that it would be his last performance, although I think everybody involved kind of understood that it could be. So we didn't really think about it too much other than the fact that we wanted to be as prepared as possible in doing the shoot and thinking about the shots and thinking about the camera work and making sure that everybody was on the same page so that there was no technical error, and just generally being very, very focused on the performance just so that we can capture everything as meticulously as possible. For your second question, how it feels to have the film premiere at this festival, it's wonderful. I think he would have really loved the fact that the film plays in Venice, and he came into Venice 6 years ago for Coda, and so it would have been a nice full circle, I think, for him as well.
If you have to read through the lines of the selection of the pieces, you know, for people that don't know Sakamoto's music as well as some do, how would you describe what's implicit in that, you know, what that progression represents?
So personally, I mean, I know his music fairly well, but compared to some folks, I don't know if I know them as well as them, but he chose music over the course that represents different stages in his career, from early music such as Tong Pu, which is very early in his musical career, in which he arranged it in a very new and slow way. He couldn't perform Tong Pu, for example, like he used to when he was very young because of his body. So he changed it, and I think that kind of a change really shows his life that he's led. And all the way until music from his final album, 12, which spans his entire career, basically. And so, yeah, I think whether or not, I don't know how intentional he was about those kinds of things going into creating the set list, but it certainly ended up representing his entire career.
Maybe Eiko and Bill can join in Yasin in talking a little bit about how the shoot was set up. I think it was pretty big. I mean, it's 30 people crew, and it was done in Tokyo. And can you describe a little bit of the production?
Yeah, well, I think one big factor was when we saw the space for the first time, which was a beautiful hall at NHK, which came with incredible acoustics, but also lighting challenges and recording challenges. And so, like, for example, we weren't able to use any wireless equipment. We were like, how do we connect all the cameras? How do we communicate? And then the sound, like, we wanted to be able to capture the performance in very long takes so that we could focus on the physicality and movement. But that meant often having a dolly. You know, how do we avoid the dolly making noise? So all of those things were challenges that, thanks to getting the set list early, we were able to work through and plan.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it was very important that the space was somewhere that RYUICHI Sakamoto felt comfortable in, and the crew was people that he really trusted. And so just making sure everything was there for the best performance he could do, and just it all came together in that way in a space that he knew already very well as he had played there before.
Now, I believe you storyboarded the entire, the entire film. How did you visualize it? I mean, what was important for you cinematically to get it on film and to translate?
Yeah, we storyboarded a lot of the songs, not all of them, but this is where Bill and I did a lot of the preparation. We had Sakamoto play every single song in his home piano, which we recorded on an iPhone, so we can see in what kind of instances in the music he would make certain movements, like kind of bend over, or in what places in the music he would become more emotional. And based on those compositions and the kind of those iPhone material that we shot, we were composing each track in a kind of a contained way, but that had a unity throughout the whole set list as well. And the thing that we focused on, like Bill said, was that long takes, so that we can really see an unfolding of his performance as if we're there live. So we had 3 cameras to capture the necessary angles, but every single kind of musical take is not edited in any way, really. It's just there. Yeah, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think there's an interesting duality where the preparation that we did allowed for improvisation. So because we planned these meticulous long takes and knew sort of where the songs would be broken up, then within that, sort of, you gave us some freedom to react to the music. And I think that makes every song a very unique experience.
I also want to note that the two other camera people who were on the team with us, Motomu Ishigaki, who's on BCAM, and Kaori Oda, who's a filmmaker, director in her own right. They're both extremely talented camera operators and filmmakers, and very sensitive, and they also really like the music, and so that really helped in just giving the three camera operators freedom to be able to react to whatever they're feeling from the music as well. And we also wanted to make sure to keep very small kind of mistakes and not be too perfect with the camera work, so because we thought that that really kind of communicated something emotional about the music as well.
And you shot in the course of how many days?
About 8 or 9, I believe. It was 9 total.
It's a very powerful feeling you get from the film. Is also the relationship with between Sakamoto and the piano. It's almost like they fuse at some point, and it gets energy out of it. Can you discuss a little bit his relation with the instrument, both visually and from an artist standpoint?
Yeah. You know, the piano happened to be the instrument that Sakamoto had the longest relationship with, although I think in past interviews he has talked about the fact that it could have been any other one, it just happened to be the piano. The piano represents the kind of his, you know, almost his partner that he's lived with for his entire life. But at the same time, he was also very critical and understood the limitations of what the piano represented as an instrument with a 12-tone system, an instrument that is based on a Western musical system, which I think led him in his life to try to explore other forms of music, like electronic music and non-Western music. But ultimately, in the end, he always comes back to the piano. Because he's so familiar with it. And so it's kind of an interesting relationship that he has with this object that is filled with all of the contradictions that he felt in his own life. Visually speaking, I think the piano is great because it's in black and white, and that's related to the reason why we chose to shoot in black and white. But in our conversations, we wanted to reduce the amount of visual information there is in the screen so that you can concentrate on the music. But at the same time, we were very aware and intentional about wanting to create almost a play between shadow and light throughout the whole lighting and the shooting. And that's one of the reasons why we used very long zoom lenses so that we can zoom in very closely to his hands and the texture of his hands and face. To the point that every so often it gets so close and it would just be a play of light and shadow to the point that it almost becomes a little bit of an abstraction. Mm-hmm. And that's something that Bill and I really wanted to do, kind of incorporate these like, almost like Dadaist aesthetics, especially for pieces like Tompu.
Was it daunting for you to be asked to film this?
A little bit. I don't really remember too well how I felt, but I definitely felt nervous during the actual shooting of it because we just need to be as ready as possible for anything that could happen. And also due to his health, we only had a few takes of every song, and so we needed to make sure that there were just no technical errors and things like that. But at the same time, I think the shooting was very comfortable and a very peaceful environment, although everyone was intense and nervous about the performance itself. Yeah.
Was there ever a conversation about making it, having him play with someone else, having other musicians in the making it like a more traditional concert film, or this was the original concept?
This was the original concept. It was from the beginning conceived as a concert film, to the point that there was a little bit of a fight, not quite a fight, but you know, a brilliant sound recordist, Zach, who's a legendary sound engineer in Japan, when he first showed us his miking plans, it was just like 50 mics surrounding the piano to the point that there was no clean shots of him, Sakamoto playing and stuff like that. And so ultimately, the Sakamoto's team explained to the crew that this is ultimately a film. And so the visual, the image also has to be given a lot of thought and consideration as much as the sound. So he reduced the number of mics a little bit, and and we were able to do the things we wanted to do visually. Yeah.
Speaking of film, how would you describe the relationship between Sakamoto and cinema?
I think ever since he was a little child, he always watched cinema. In fact, I believe one of the earliest memories he has of music is Fellini's score of something. I don't know exactly which one, but he talks about that. So I think cinema has always been with him. And then, of course, his kind of breakout piece, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, was from the film Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence by Oshima. And ever since, he's worked on various films, including Bertolucci's films and all sorts of people. And so it was always with him, and he always watched a lot of movies. And he was always inspired by movies. In fact, I think his second to last album he called it a soundtrack to a non-existent Tarkovsky film. And so, as you can tell, I think he was very inspired by cinema all the time. Yeah.
This is obviously the world premiere of the film later today. And what are the plans for it? What is next for it?
Maybe you can jump in. We will be touring the film around to various different film festivals, and then hopefully we can have it screen in various movie theaters so that different fans around the world can watch his final performance, and I hope it becomes accessible to as many people as possible.
Do you have any question? If not, we have to finish here. Yes, and I want to thank Neo and Bill and Wiki for being here and for bringing us the film.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Buongiorno, siamo qua per la conferenza stampa del nostro film fuori concorso Hitman e il regista Richard Linklater.
So shall we leave?
If you have a question in Italian, you don't need. I start with a simple question. I think you read Skip Hollandsworth's story a long time ago. You had already adapted a film from his work, Bernie, and it took a while to do it. Can you explain what captured your attention and why it took so long to finally make the film?
Right, Skip Hollandsworth's story in Texas Monthly. Skip's great. He's a friend of mine. He's got a real nose for a true crime story, and I did a movie, Bernie, based on a story of his. But this I read before I even did Bernie in 2001, and I really liked the character, I liked the story, but it never really came together as a film in my mind. It took, over the pandemic in spring of 2020, Glenn Powell called me, and he had read that story. He said, hey, I read this story about it. I said, I read that when you were in your diapers, you know? But not really. But yeah, I know, but we started talking about it. I was like, you know, that movie, it doesn't really work as a movie because it's the same thing over and over. And Glenn, bless him, kind of pushed me. It's like, well, what if we don't, you know, like, what if we just kind of keep going? I was like, yeah, well, what if she called, the story ends when he lets her off and encourages her not to proceed, and she goes free. And it's like, well, what if he responded to her, you know, she reached out to him, and it's like, oh, and he's trapped in his identity, you know, hitman identity. That's where it really took shape and became the kind of twisted, dark, romantic comedy I think we are. So that was the fun part. But the basis to this is very real, you know. I knew Gary Johnson. He was a real guy who did this. He played these characters. There is this phenomenon, as we all know, of people wanting to solicit murder. It's very bizarre.
How much did you interact with him while writing the movie and making it?
You know, I just talked to him on the phone over a few years, but right as I was, because at one point I thought the film would happen earlier and it didn't, so I got tired of disappointing him. He didn't really care. At the end of the movie it says, chillest dude imaginable. That was Gary to me, because he was just like, you know, you'd think when someone's going to make a movie and use your name in it about your life, that you'd be a little, you know, maybe pay attention or care a little bit. He was just like, whatever. You know, he really didn't care. He was like, well, Skip says you're a good guy. Whatever. You know, he was so nonplussed. He was a true Buddhist guy, you know. So, but right as we were location scouting, early pre-production, I've been trying to get in touch with him, and I heard, I called Skip and said, I haven't heard back from Gary at all. Have you heard, you know, call Sonny or his partner? And he called me back immediately and said, Rick, you know, something terrible's happened. I'm like, oh, no, I knew what it was. And he had passed away. He was a Vietnam vet, probably Agent Orange kind of pulmonary thing. So he had lost a lot of weight over the summer and passed away right as we were starting the movie. So we're dedicating it to him, but it was sad. So I never met him in person. I was like, oh, you gotta come visit the set. He's like, maybe, you know, okay. You know, he really didn't care.
There's a question there.
Sorry, long-winded.
Buongiorno, sono qua. Allora, intanto complimenti per questo film straordinario, credo di un po' prendere tutte le voci qua presenti. Abbiamo riso, una commedia di un'intelligenza sopraffine. Appunto, qual è la chiave per continuare a scrivere commedie così perfette, così continuamente attuali, ma allo stesso tempo che funzionano sempre? Dico questo, cioè noi ieri abbiamo avuto qui Woody Allen, che ormai è un classico, ma lei sta diventando il classico della commedia contemporanea, mi sembra, proprio nella scrittura. Grazie. Quindi la chiave, il segreto.
Thank you, but I think it's just a point of view of the world. I think I see things in like darkly comedic terms. It's just probably a personality. I read a story about people who want to kill someone, and I think it's kind of funny, you know. So I saw comedic potential in that. So it's a serious film on one level, but I don't know. And it's I don't know, humor, funny, I don't know. But I love making movies because you work with people, and we laugh a lot. My whole crew, everybody, in hiring people, part of my thing is, are they funny? Are they fun? You know, are they fun to be around? We got to live with each other. So I love actors. My two things with actors, and Glenn and Audrey definitely fit this. Smart and funny. That's a good start. But you could say that about everything, right? A relationship, or, you know, so that is, I don't know. I don't think that much about it, you know, but thank you for the compliment. I don't.
The film is actually multiple genre. There are all these tonal shifts because with the characters and
Yeah.
you know, but it was that's part of the interest.
Well, yeah. As you're writing it, you realize, well, like, what genre are we in? Well, this is kind of film noir. He's meeting, you know, but it's kind of like, well, if it's film noir, he should end up dead or in prison, right? That's what the genre says. But I don't know. This is more complex than that. The modern world's a little too kind of complex and fucked up for that simple trope that worked in the 40s and still works. But it just felt like, you know, it feels like more of a screwball comedy, you know, if you think about it. You know, they meet under unusual circumstances or something. It's the ultimate meet cute. She's trying to kill somebody. But and then here are all these obstacles, and then they end up together happily ever, you know, like, why can't it be true love, you know? So it was a fun thing to feel your way through. And again, this is the fictional second half of the movie. And it was just trying to do something you hadn't necessarily seen before, but I thought the notions of identity, the way he's kind of trapped in this character, that seemed like, in the modern world, this century just feels like things like identity are kind of unstable, you know. There's a lot of opportunity in this world for fictional, and, you know, the world we're living in, swimming in misinformation and, you know, created characters and reality. I don't know. A lot of opportunities for people to represent themselves as they aren't. So this whole thing seemed like it fit the kind of fucked upness of our times in some strange way. So it was kind of fun to delve into that. So.
Hi, I'm a psychologist and I do cinematography, so I very often use your movies because of the relationship topic, you know. And I'm really curious, what's yours in this story? And what do you think about relationships now in your moment of life? Because I see that you have a big empathy for the characters, for their moral choices, you know. And maybe there is a punishment, the last scene, the marriage, you know, and the children. So I'm just curious, really.
Well, you've touched on a whole nother area there at the end. But yeah, you could see it that way. How's your relationships going? Are you good? You're young still. That awaits you. That is a funny idea, though. Yeah, I mean, that is the trope, you know, children in marriage, that's like happily ever after, or not, you know. But I'm not answering your question very well about relationships. What? But well, when you get into relationships, romantic and otherwise, I mean, it's a fascinating. We're very interested in that. Every human has an investment in that. It's a rich subject matter. It's complex. It's deep. It's dark. It's funny. There's a reason we're compelled to potentially be, you know, involved in a movie like that, you know, a story. So I don't know. I'm drawn to it. In this case, romantic comedy. I don't think I'd made. People consider the Before trilogy. I guess they're, in a way, they're comedy. They're funny, but they're not like comedies. They're not plotty. This was very plotted and very specific, I think, to the genres we've talked about. So it's fun to feel like you're in a genre and you're doing your own kind of twist on it.
There's a question there.
Good day, Oraz Kiribayev, Esquire, Kazakhstan. I'd like to ask two questions. First of all, when and how did you get to the idea of framing the whole story from the psychoanalytical perspective? And the second is more of another project, the one you're working on, Merrily We Roll Along. How is that going during the last several years and with the current situation with the strikes happening?
Right,
Thanks so long.
The first question, psychological perspective? I mean, that...
Yeah, psychoanalytical.
Yeah, well, that comes from the underlying material. Gary Johnson himself was an instructor at a college in psychology and philosophy, and so I thought that said a lot about him. He's a very thoughtful person, old school Jungian psychology, listened to classical music, pretty fascinating guy, very thoughtful. So I thought, oh, that's such an interesting character to play off of, to want to transcend, you know. So we all have fantasies of that, you know, to maybe be someone else. And the contrast was nice there. Your second part, Merrily. Yeah, a film I'm working on for a long time, if I'm lucky. 18 years from now, we might be done. We're shooting again pretty soon. If we can. I'm hopeful, like everyone, that the strikes will be resolved by then. I think they will.
There's a question here.
Hi there, Mr. Linklater. Ben Dalton from Screen International. Just to pick up a bit more on that, on the strikes, as you're one of the most acclaimed US independent filmmakers, what do you see as a way forwards? Would you have any message for the AMPTP, for example, to sort of get us out of this situation as quickly as possible?
I think both sides, I mean, everyone's feeling it. I think no one's happy. But that's kind of the problem when you're in an industry and suddenly no one's happy. Maybe it is time to recalibrate and come forward with some things that could, you know, be fair to everyone. And, you know, so I think something's got to give. But I'm not really in the middle of it so much. I'm on strike. I'm a proud union member, a couple unions. So, but I think it'll be resolved. But it's kind of one of those crucial moments. You know, you got to, every now and then, we stand here, you know, because 60 years ago, people went on strike. You know, labor has always advanced through that. So every now and then, it's your time to do a correction for the future. It just seems like that came up now. I don't think it's predicted to this degree, but every now and then. And we're all kind of feeling our way through it. You know, we didn't even know what the situation would be, you know, going forward. So everybody's just sort of, you know, rolling with it best we can. So,
Gentleman there.
Hi, Mr. Linklater. Could you just talk a little bit about discovering Glenn Powell on Everybody Wants Some? How did you sort of come across him, and what attracted you to him as a collaborator / muse? Do you see kind of a kinship with McConaughey a little bit in terms of the sort of unbridled confidence and cool that they both possess?
There is a McConaughey quality, and I've gotten those two together. But yeah, actually, I knew Glenn as a teenager. He had a small part in my movie Fast Food Nation in 2006. He was in high school. He was a kid. So I knew him then. But the big leap he made when he came in on an audition for Everybody Wants Some, he was a man at that point. And I was like, oh, wow, when did Glenn Powell get, I mean, he was just so smart and funny and charming. And I think he's obviously a star, you know, as is Audrey Arjona. She's amazing, too. So it was fun to have these parts for people of that age to really have fun with those characters. And, yeah, I just think they're both so gifted. But, yeah, no, Glenn's special. If the world doesn't know that yet, I hope this movie's seen for that. He's smart. He's kind of the best you can imagine. He's a great collaborator, super smart, and obviously really talented.
How did you decide the alias that he was, all these characters that he was?
That was so fun. All those real, and those are all based on, that was pretty real to Gary Johnson. You're in all these old society ladies. That was really fun, and the different disguises. Glenn deserves so much of the credit there. He really, I'm more of a real like, oh, is that too much? And he's like, no, we're gonna, he pushed it. There would be moments where, like, we had done hair and makeup tests, and I kind of had an idea, but on the he would step out of the van in costume, and the whole crew would just stop and go, oh, who is this freak showing up? The last one with the orange hair, that guy, it was like, that was the last day of production, and everybody just went, they couldn't believe it. So, I don't know, that was a lot of fun.
Una domanda qua.
Yeah, I wanted, always about Glenn, I wanted to ask how did you, because he looks a lot different, also between Ron and Gary. It's almost like, I don't know, even, when he's like he went to the gym when he's Ron, I don't know. And another question was, when you say that hitmen don't really exist, you show some great American films, some clips, and I was curious about your choices there.
Oh, yeah, that was fun. So, well, Glenn, he did a lot of research. I mean, Glenn, we never quit working on this movie. Through pre-production, we'd work all weekend, we'd work all night. We were shooting in New Orleans, and we never went out. I think we went out to eat once. It was like we just worked the whole time. And a lot of that work, he's reading books on body language, he working on his walk. Like, he really wanted those to be distinctly different people. And even as he's lecturing, he's becoming a little more Ron. If you notice, he's still in Gary attire, a little less so. He's becoming, we had this kind of, progression into Ron. Because I felt, if you know Glenn, that would be satisfying. Because we all know Glenn Powell really isn't that nerdy college teacher. He really is closer to Ron. So that would be kind of satisfying to play to that by the end. And yeah, the montage, that wasn't even really in the script originally. I was really trying to hit that point home, that the notion of hitmen is a pop culture. I'm pretty sure movies invented hitmen. They aren't real. Not that this movie couldn't deconstruct the notion of a hitman any clearer. And yet, have you ever heard of a hitman being arrested? You hear of people soliciting hitmen all the time. You've never, because they don't exist. They don't. Mobs, drug cartels, yes, they're people who have reasons to kill, coerced murders. But this idea, and the movie says it, couldn't be more clear. It's like there's no such thing as you meet someone you've never met that you could just pay like you're paying them to mow your yard, and they go kill someone and finish the job. Think about it. It would be so easy to arrest them. Every police force would have someone trying to get someone murdered, and the guy who showed up and took the money, you would just arrest him, right? So anyway, but we're invested. But this is the interesting, that's the facts. But the more interesting thing is why we love that character so much. I mean, it goes with cinema, There's so many great hitmen. Next year, there'll be 3 more hitman movies here. We love it. It's always a compelling, we like the violence, we like the notion of things, or do we like the notion that maybe they are real, we're invested in that. That's a darker thought. Like, that guy who pissed me off, he's only alive because I'm letting him be alive. I got a raise at work. I could invest that in killing him, but I'm not. So maybe I'm empowered by the notion that there's but we should be glad that they aren't. We should be relieved. I'm trying to give relief, but I think we're all gonna, as a society, we're gonna still go with the myth because it's just too fun. I like them. I like hitman movies.
But to this, the film raises an interesting question about identity, not only about his, but about all these people that they just stepped out of their regular life and they make up, they have a conversation about actually killing someone.
Yeah, I've seen these tapes, and I've seen surveillance tapes from Gary. I had all the research and listened to conversations. They're startling in their banality. Of, they're deciding to kill someone. The darkest thing you could do in this lifetime, I would assume, would be consciously take someone else's life. And they're doing it like it's nothing. So And I don't even know, and they're playing a role at that point like they're in a crime film, or they're kind of getting on the hitman's wavelength. It's pretty funny to see them, you know. People were very kind of crazy, delusional in this way. Did you hear there was a hitman website? It was a parody website, a joke. It was like, check the box, how you want them killed, who, give them the name and the address. And it was a joke, and people started doing it, and the guy turned it over to the law enforcement, and they started going arresting people. This is true. There are multiple articles on this, but that's how crazy that is. It that? I don't know. Are we all that easily bought and sold, disposable? It's a funny area. Let's do more research. Make a thing. I've been doing it for years.
Buongiorno, Valentina D'Amico, credo serva il traduttore. Le cuffie. La mia domanda è stata in parte anticipata perché guardando il film ero attratta da questi dettagli irresistibili sul personaggio di Glenn Powell, tipo il fatto che guida la Honda Civic, il motivo per cui la guida, il fatto che è una cat person, non una dog person. Quindi mi chiedevo quanto c'è di vero, del vero Gary Johnson, quanto hai inventato tu nella sceneggiatura e quanto ha messo di suo Glenn Powell nell'interpretazione. E poi espando sul finale, visto che il finale c'è questo omicidio, diciamo, simpatico, questo aiuto a togliersi di torno l'unico testimone, e però viene specificato che questo non è avvenuto. Quindi questo gioco tra realtà e invenzione, come lo hai creato?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the whole thing is kind of begging the reality in fiction, and we took it on. I didn't want to play any games. I'm being very open about, it becomes a fictional movie here, but this is true. You asked about Gary. A lot of this is based on his own methods and his own, this is really him up to that point. When the relationship starts, the romantic comedy starts. That's fictional, but I don't know, what was the other? Yeah, I don't know what Gary would have thought of that. He probably would have been amused. His partner, Sunny, I referred to earlier, I think she was okay with it. She looked up Glenn online, and she was like, oh, yeah, he looks pretty good, but he's nowhere near as hot as the real Gary. She was really in love with him.
There's a question there.
Sì, salve. Tanto complimenti per il film. Le faccio questa domanda perché adoro tutta la sua filmografia e cercavo di collocare un po' questo film rispetto anche ai successi che l'hanno reso famoso, e mi sembra che ci sia in questo film il tema di come il tempo cambia le persone, cioè come le persone cambiano, e c'è anche una lezione che fa il professore sul fatto se possiamo cambiare drasticamente la nostra vita, no? E lei ha fatto dei film dove ha raccontato nel tempo come appunto cambiano le persone, quindi rispetto alla lezione del suo professore che cosa pensa? Se rimaniamo sempre delle piccole variazioni o se possiamo dare un forte cambiamento. E l'ultima cosa le chiedo, magari glielo chiederanno sempre, se ci sarà un quarto episodio della sua trilogia Before.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the heart of the movie. Can we change? That's the core of what we're exploring here. Identity, self, can someone change? We all ask ourselves, these are eternal, ancient questions. But I think in the modern context, what I talked about a little before, I think it gets more interesting in this age. But I think that's what everyone should be striving for as a human being. I mean, we want to all be better, I hope it's an empowering message by the end, that Gary, in the movie, seems to have found that for himself, that you can actually change for the better, despite the body count before, that you can be a better person. You can. But I want people who are consciously making decisions to be better. I think everyone needs to be conscious, of that. It's a good thing that people are trying to be better. We as people need to be better. Societies need to be better. Everything could be better. But you need conscious people trying to be better and making decisions based on best efforts and real facts. What scares me is a passive world of people, taking in things that aren't true and with no discernment, and that's more dangerous. So.
And you'd ask if you have another plan for a new installment of the trilogy.
Your second question. Nothing. We missed our 9-year thing a couple years ago. But as long as we're still here, you never know. Maybe I'm for a life project. So just nothing on the book. We won't do it just to do it. As fun as it would be, have to have something to say about life at a certain stage. So. Nothing.
Can you talk a little bit about setting the film not in Texas but in New Orleans?
Well, the original story was set in Houston, Texas, and New Orleans is they're very similar. They're two very humid cities in the South. So both full of kind of crazy characters. So it was fun to shoot in New Orleans. Great crew, great people. We had a lot of fun, but I think the story could have been told anywhere in a way, but New Orleans felt very apt. And, it was partially financial, of course. They had an incentive. Texas at that moment didn't have any incentive money, so, we're all nomads as a filmmaker. You go where it makes the most sense for you to shoot a film, so I'm fine with that.
You mentioned Screwball before. You're a great cinephile, and I'm wondering if there were films that you looked at as you were preparing this one.
Not really. I didn't have to go back. I just, the films and like so much. I think I was probably boned up a little more on the film noir. Some of those I rewatched. Things like Double Indemnity, Body Heat, some of the classics, crime films I like. But I didn't really have to go back and see the romantic comedies. That was just kind of there. Always throughout. So I don't know. I don't really reference that many films, but in the build up over the year or two, I remember seeing a few things, thinking like, oh, what is that? It really makes you want to not do things that have been done before. Mm-hmm. It's good to remind yourself what you think is an interesting idea has actually been done a lot. So it challenges you to put a new twist on cliches or expectations, maybe. So it's good to think that way. But at the end of the day, I think we're more screwball comedy than film noir. Just William Powell and Myrna Loy didn't usually kill a couple people to get to the end. So I don't know. I think that's funny.
I'm thinking about the scene, the choreography of the scene where they are on the phone and the two of them are in the same shot and they're talking and he's telling her what.
Oh, he's dictating.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about filming that and the choreography and
that
how much
film
of
is
this
kind
was
of a metaphor? They're acting in that scene, but they're kind of acting. It's kind of meta, that scene, and it was a very important scene. And I can't tell you how hard Glenn and Audria worked on that. We rehearsed that for weeks and weeks, maybe months. That was probably, a lot of effort went into that scene to make it seem so fast and easy. But they're both great, you can't do that if you're not a great actor. They're both so funny, and I don't know. That was kind of its own little standalone movie within a movie. It's funny, he's kind of directing her, because he kind of comes in and she picks up on it. And it's like, it's chemistry. They're meant to be. So, I don't know. That kind of stuff's fun to do. So.
Do you have any other question? They call me for time, so I'm going to have to stop here. And I thank you, Rick.
Really? Thank you so much. And Glenn and Adria, I wish they were here. They're here in spirit. Thank you. Ciao. Grazie. Grazie. I didn't know how much to talk about.
Buongiorno, buongiorno a tutti e benvenuti alla conferenza stampa di Green Border. Vi presento subito gli ospiti al nostro tavolo. Questo è un momento particolarmente difficile perché la pronuncia di questi nomi è molto difficile, farò del mio meglio. Allora, il produttore Marcin Wierzchowski. Gli interpreti Tomasz Włosok, Jalal Altawin, Maja Ostaszewska, Bey Janai Atai e Daya Naus, Mohammad El Rashi. La collaboratrice alla regia Katarzyna Łaszeka e la regista Agnieszka Holland. Allora, attendo naturalmente le vostre domande. Vorrei cominciare con il chiedere ad Agnieszka Holland. Questo film arriva a 30 anni da Europa e 30 anni dopo ci ritroviamo nuovamente davanti a un'Europa, come dire, divisa in due, da un'anima divisa in due. Può raccontarci ecco, il sentimento che ha accompagnato la nascita di questo film a 30 anni, da un film che già raccontava moltissimo sulla doppia anima dell'Europa?
Well, you know, one of the reasons why I did that movie of today, you watch today, it is because I did other movies years ago. And I was doing the films about the experience of the Second World War, the Holocaust, the Stalinian famine, Holodomor, because I had the impression that it didn't end somehow. It was put to sleep. This danger of the nationalism, totalitarianism, and the violence as the weapon to fight the problems, that it disappeared for a while. It was anyway evacuated from our European calendar, European way of dealing with the problems, but that it didn't disappear. It can come back any moment. And when I named the film Europa, Europa, Europe, Europe, with double name, the people have been asking me why. We shot the film in 1989, which was a very special year for European history, when the Berlin Wall fell apart, the Solidarność movement won, and the Iron Curtain fell down, and after some historians or politologues was telling that it's the end of the history. So no, that is not the end of the history. And the vaccination of the Holocaust somehow evaporated, and we have to deal today with the future, which can be, I'm afraid, similar to what we experienced in the past. And Europa, Europa meant Europe is the continent of dreams, of the democracy, culture, civilization, human rights. And in the same time, it is the continent of most terrible crimes against humanity. So it's why this double title, and it's why we are facing again two possible ways the Europe will be going. And I believe that migrant crisis, refugee crisis, which started on the high level in 2014, is a crisis and a challenge which will shape the future of Europe. So that movie speaks about something which is going on the Polish-Belarusian border, and it's speaking about the answer to that challenge by the politicians, by the military forces, who are, of course, directed by the politicians, the migrants, refugees, and the activists and local people from this region. And we choose we choose the epical approach, the approach where we are showing different point of views, because we had the impression that we are first to tell that story, and that we have to try to capture it in all possible complexity, and give the justice and give the voice to those who've been silenced and who are voiceless. And before answering the next question, I would like you to introduce also my first row, because I'm my closest collaborators here. Fred Bernstein, who was our producer, Gabriela Łazarkiewicz-Sieczko, who is a screenwriter, Maria Blicharska, who is, and Damien McDonald, who are the French co-producers, Diana Elbum, who is the Belgium co-producer, and Kasia Adamik, who is my artistic advisor. And in the room are other members of our team, so maybe we are more numerous than the journalists here. But they will be, ready to listen to us as well.
Allora, c'è una domanda lì? Sì, poi davanti qui.
Corriere della Sera, buongiorno. Volevo chiedere alla regista, come spiega che le guardie di frontiera polacche che aiutano gli ucraini in fuga hanno un comportamento del tutto diverso sul confine bielorusso? Dipende soltanto dal colore della pelle, come lei dice nelle note informative, o c'è dell'altro? E poi la seconda domanda: è riduttivo definirlo un film sui migranti o un film politico? Grazie.
If it's what?
Ripeti, se è riduttivo definirlo.
La seconda domanda è se è riduttivo definirlo un film sui migranti, un film politico.
Well, it depends what kind of the power of the movie you are talking about. It means, I think, that if you are trying to capture the reality, and if you try to find the heart of the reality and to bring that experience to the audience, it is rather the strength. I personally think that certain weakness of European cinema in last decades maybe, it's that mostly the future cinema, especially the fiction cinema, is not involved enough in narrative about the world of today in more global scale and in more epical scale. In some point, the ambitious TV series took over, but now ambitious TV series are the kind of the disappearing species. So I think that it's up to movie again to take over, especially that we are living in a very dangerous world with the war in Ukraine, with the refugee crisis, with the climate crisis, with the populist and even fascist politicians raising up. And if the movies will turn back to those problems, I think we'll be losing the moral and artistic strength. What was the first part of the question?
If just depends. Sì, no, le stanno ritraducendo.
Bodyguard. Well, if you read the 19th century great Roman literature, Dostoevsky, for example, you know that the human being is very complex and that he is capable of the best and the worst. And it depends on many things. Several of my movies are about that, about this, battle between the evil and the good inside of the human being. My film In Darkness, my film Charlatan recently. So I think that in generally, all nations, all societies have the same capacity to be good or to be bad. You have the extremes, you have the people who are psychopaths, and who are finding the satisfaction and pleasure in violence, in conflicts, in making bad things to other people. You have, after, some kind of the writers among nations, the people who are so empathic or so determined by the gene of justice that they are good even if it goes against their main interests and their basic interests. And after, in the middle, you have those 99% of the population and who is capable of the best, like Poles on the Polish-Ukrainian borders and of the wars. And it depends very much how this potential is used by the authorities, by the governments, by the politicians, also by the churches, by the opinion makers, and the character of the border guards. We've been talking to some border guards, of course in secret because they didn't want it to be recognized. And that kind of the battle was going on in front of our eyes when we've been talking to them. So it is what human being is. And we wanted that film not to be the piece of justice propaganda. We wanted that film to reflect where we are today and how conflicted and how difficult are our choices.
C'è sì, il signore qui, poi due qui, poi torniamo.
Sebastiano Giorgi, Gazzetta Italia, stampa italiana con sede a Varsavia. Volevo chiedere, questo problema affrontato da diversi approcci in maniera, secondo me, straordinaria, manca rumorosamente l'approccio dei media, perché a parte un attimo l'autoradio della macchina che parlava del problema, non è stato descritto come i media stanno vivendo o raccontando questa cosa. Immagino sia una scelta.
We are living in a polarized world, and the media are polarized as well. So it's difficult to talk about media altogether. You have very different medias. But the function of the media, it means I think that media to some extent are corrupted, or corrupted by the polarization exactly, or corrupted by money, or the market, or how you will call it. As about Polish medias, we have some medias who've been following that crisis from the very beginning in the very honest and very risky way. But in some point, very soon after the crisis started and became public, the government decided to close the zone around of the borders and forbid the media, the humanitarian organizations, the medical organizations, also the opposition politicians and some opinion seekers to enter the zone. So it created some kind of the nightmare zone when terrible thing happened, and it wasn't reported, it wasn't documented. Mr. Kaczynski, who is the ruler of the country right now for the last 8 years, he expressed the reasons why. He said, Americans allowed media to go to Vietnam and they lost the war. It means it was quite open and cynical statement. We are doing terrible things there, but we don't want any image to go out from there. And that it was the main reason why we started with Gabriela, with Kasia, to think that with Marcin, my producer, who was...
And Kamila Tarabura.
Kamila Tarabura, but if somebody is not here, I'm not speaking about him because it will be too many names. We've been it means we've been directing that film, 3 of us. I was some kind of the showrunner, and there it was 2 young women directors who joined our team, and we've been discussing everything from the beginning, and we've been also shooting on parallel way. It's why we've been able to also to make such an incredibly tight schedule. And it was a lot of collaboration, energy, talent, and trust. And I believe in collective collaboration, especially women collectives, but one man is absolutely necessary as a head.
Thank you.
Where I was, not to be lost.
You believe in collaboration?
Oh, yeah, I believe in collaboration, yes, but it wasn't the answer to the question. The question
was about the media.
Media. Mm-hmm. So you know, we wanted to. It means I said it was impossible for the documentary filmmakers to go there, for the journalists to go there, but we can recreate it. We can make the fiction. We can do something which I know how to do. It means to make the fiction film about the events which are going right now on. And I have to tell that from the moment when the zone was established, and it took 1 year, I think, when it worked, a little less, no one really protested. It was very few people who protested. And media accepted it, you know. It means they didn't go there. And frankly, even the media, which I respect enormously, it was after COVID, you know. I think that the COVID taught us to submit our freedom and our freedom of will to the authorities. If the authorities are acting for our good, for our safety, okay, but we have to have the control. And I think that the media has always to control the reason why the governments and powers are taking the decisions which limits our freedom and our life choices. So my opinion about media facing that crisis we are showing is very mixed. They did great things, but they also been a little cowardish and pretty lazy.
Prego.
My name is Yanis. I'm from Athens, Greece. Hello and congratulations for your film. I have to tell you that I've been watching, following film festivals since the 90s, and I've seen many films about immigration problem. To tell you the truth, nothing has really changed from that period up till now. And I heard before, while you were speaking the first question by the moderator, that you believe that the crisis, the immigration crisis of 2014 will show us the new face of Europe. And I would like to know your opinion on that face of Europe. I don't want you to become a prophet, but I would like to know, what do you really believe about the new face of Europe? Thank you.
Well, I believe that Europe is in train of losing its convictions. I believe that Europe is afraid. The population, the people, the societies are afraid of the drastic change of their comfort zone, of our comfort zone. I know that the populist politicians are using it in more and more efficient way. I know also that the dictators like Mr. Putin understood very well this weak spot in European conscience and European actions, and they will be using that spot to provoking that fears and this confusion and supporting the populist governments more and more efficiently. I feel that European Union, which was the child of the awakening of conscience after the Second World War, is afraid to efficiently deal with migrants' crisis because on one side they are not stupid. They know that it will be growing, and they know that somehow the means they are using are totally non-efficient. It means, you know, the pushbacks, pushing the boats from the shore, pushing the people through the walls, building the walls, and paying the foreign dictators from Africa or Asia to keep the refugees on their territory in some kind of the camps, that it will not solve the problem. It's like giving the, little something on the open wound. And they know also, or they have to know at least, that with the climate catastrophe, the problem will be only growing, and that we have to face the real challenge, what to do about it. I will not find the answer what to do, but I can tell you what will happen if we will be going further on that road. The European Union, Europe, the continent of freedom, democracy, human rights will disappear. It will change to some kind of the fortress where the people who want to seek our continent will be killed by us, by Europeans.
C'è il signore lì.
Peter Paul Huth, Germany. I have a question concerning Agnieszka Holland and Maja Ostaszewska. I had the feeling that her character, Julia, is like the moral center of the film. So I was wondering, Ms. Holland, could you explain why you chose her to play the part? And how did you prepare for the part? Thank you.
I choose Maya because she is not only the great actress and very photogenic, as you can see, but also because she understands deeply the story we've been trying to tell. Maya herself acted as an activist on the Polish-Belarusian borders. She went several times to the forest with the group GRANICA, with the collective The Border. And she was also the spokeswoman to the media, using her popularity and her voice to speak about it as widely as possible. So she was, for me, like the real conscience of that film and something like the consultant in the first place.
One of those. Thank you, Agnieszka, so much. Thank you for the question. Yeah, for me, being a part of this movie was significant on two different ways. At first, of course, as an actress, it was a great honor, and I was really happy to work again with Agnieszka. It's our second movie. She's an amazing director, and I really respect how brave and wise she is in stance against oppression, violence, discrimination, and she does it through her movies and as a public figure as well. And I to tell you the truth, I share her beliefs. It's very close to me, and I'm extremely happy that Agnieszka decided to tell the story. And from another hand, as Agnieszka says, for me it was really personal experience because I was involved with humanitarian response of crisis of the Polish-Belarusian borders since very beginning. I took part with humanitarian interventions with Grupa Granica. Grupa Granica is the, let me say, umbrella structure for NGOs, community members, social and aid workers. We were working together to help people in need. And during being on the sets, sometimes, because thanks for deep research, sometimes it looks very close to reality. And sometimes I felt like during the psychodrama, it was, at once I was extremely thankful that we are telling the story, but from another hand, it was hard, yes, to tell you the truth, it was hard. Especially, maybe I give you when we, for example, when we shoot the scene situated in the middle of the night on swamp, and after our work we were happy. We had blankets, hot tea. We were applauding each other for the work we did. The consciousness that in the same moment, just 200 kilometers north, some people, same like us, they are waiting for, they're in real dangers, waiting for help, with which they might be not respond. It's devastating. And when you are in your real life so close to in the forest, I saw people suffering. When you are really close, when you see suffering, injustice, and stupidity of the decision to not to help people, it stayed with you, and it's devastating. So I'm so happy to be part of this movie, and let me say I'm also happy it's not the political statement. In my opinion, it's a very humane movie, not black and white answer, just asking us, and let me say an eternal question: what would you do if someone in need knocked to your doors? Because of course you can open, and it's always your choice. In my opinion, it's always not your choice. Not look at the system. Just make your own choices. So of course you can open your door, you can help, or you can decide to pretend not to see, not to hear, and not to know what's happened. So yes, thank you for being a part, and thank you guys for your presence and willingness in sharing your personal experience with us. Thank you.
Purtroppo siamo quasi in chiusura e la signora Holland mi ha chiesto qualche minuto per poter leggere una cosa che le sta a cuore condividere con voi. So if you want to read the document you have for us.
Grupa Granica, a coalition of organizations and individuals bringing humanitarian aid to those in need at the border, asked me to pass on this message to you, so that we do not forget that the story from the movie is still happening, that as we are sitting here now, there are people hiding in the forest, being stripped of their dignity, safety, human rights. And some of them will lose their lives here in Europe, not because Europe does not have resources to help them, but because we choose not to. Issa was the love of my life. His laughter opened people's hearts. No one could understand how our love had survived the past 10 years of war, poverty, constant fear. For me, it's obvious. Our love survived because it was Issa. This is how Bernadette remembers her beloved, who died on the Polish-Belarusian border in September 2021. Issa Georgios was a charming 24-year-old Syrian, the soul of every party. He could win anyone with his smile. Issa was the eldest son who took care of his family. He wanted a full life for himself and his loved ones. What scared him most was solitude. Yet, he left for Europe on his own and died in a foreign forest alone. His only thought was a dream of a safe place to live. The world sees him as an illegal migrant. We see him as a tormented person who was unfairly sentenced to suffering and death. At least 49 people have lost their lives on the Polish-Belarusian border since August 2021. Since 2014, 60,000 people have died attempting to reach Europe. This number includes those who crossed the Mediterranean Sea to land here, in Italy. Please honor them with a minute of silence. Thank you.
Purtroppo dobbiamo davvero fermarci qui. Ringrazio tutti davvero per queste parole e per il film che ci avete regalato. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all my actors and collaborators. Mohammed, Dalia, Behi, Jalal, Tomek, Maya, Kasia, Marcin, everybody. Thank you.
Buongiorno a tutti e benvenuti alla conferenza stampa di ENEA. Vi presento subito gli ospiti al tavolo, a partire dai produttori: Lorenzo Mieli per The Apartment Pictures, società del gruppo Fremantle; Massimiliano Orfei, Vision Distribution. Gli attori: Matteo Branciamore, Chiara Noschese, Giorgio Quarzo Guarascio, Benedetta Porcaroli, Sergio Castellitto e il regista e sceneggiatore Pietro Castellitto. In prima fila saluto e do il benvenuto ad altri interpreti: Adamo Dionisi, Giorgio Montanini, Cesare Castellitto, ai produttori Andrea Scorsati, Fremantle, e Luca Guadagnino, Frenesi. Allora, so che le domande saranno molte, quindi alzate bene la mano così che possa vedervi. Io, Pietro, vorrei cominciare con una domanda per te. Con il tuo film precedente, I Predatori, premiato peraltro qui a Venezia, avevi raccontato l'incontro di due mondi molto distanti, e l'alto e il basso, diciamo, e hai proseguito in questa opera seconda raccontando questo strano contrasto, questo interessante contrasto, e una borghesia che in Italia nessuno racconta. Se ci parli proprio dell'inizio e della genesi di questa storia, se ci sono delle immagini anche da cui sei partito.
Ma fondamentalmente, vabbè, grazie a tutti, insomma, felice di essere qua. Poi dalla TV la stanza sembra più grande, invece la platea alla fine tutto sommato è... No, fondamentalmente è un film sul desiderio di sentirsi vivi, e credo che insomma tutte le scelte, il bisogno che muove le scelte d'Enea è quello di sentire dentro di sé il movimento della vita, ed è un film su questo, e tutti i personaggi a loro modo provano a sentirsi vivi, e da qui si genera un conflitto. Se magari i ristoranti o luoghi che frequenta Enea possono essere elitari, però quel desiderio quella vitalità è incorruttibile, e quel desiderio di sentirsi vivi non è elitario per me, è trasversale a tutti i giovani, forse di qualsiasi epoca, sicuramente di qualsiasi città e di qualsiasi quartiere. Poi il conflitto borghese, insomma, l'idea era quella un po' di svincolarsi dal cliché per cui la famiglia borghese apatica genera dei figli nichilisti. In realtà Enea per me è un eroe romantico e viene da una famiglia che non è apatica, è piena di umanità. Insomma, la scena del Natale credo lo testimoni. Il disagio che vive è proprio quello di provare a essere all'altezza delle sue ambizioni, e si trova a vivere in un'epoca, in un contesto dove la paralisi prolifera, perché poi il paradosso tragico dell'esistenza è che uno la vita la sente meglio in guerra, e quindi poi Enea e Valentino e tutti gli altri, soprattutto Enea e Valentino, per sentirsi vivi si inventeranno una loro guerra. Quindi questo è un po' il senso del...
Ci sono delle domande, e sempre, ecco, ricollegandomi a quello che stavi dicendo, tu hai definito in questo film un gangster movie ma senza gangster, quindi volevo capire il tuo lavoro no, il tuo lavoro sul genere, ecco, sul genere, però, come dire, un genere fuori dalle regole del genere.
Sì, nel senso che poi i film sono stati fatti capolavori assoluti, insomma, sono stati fatti gangster movie assoluti, quindi il punto di vista che mi ha appassionato era quello di raccontare le conseguenze del sottobosco criminale nella vita di tutti i giorni, ed è come se sotto traccia si muovesse un gangster movie che però non appare mai, e ogni tanto, no, entra nel film Enea e lascia impreparati spero il pubblico, sicuramente i personaggi non se l'aspettano, quindi sì.
C'è una domanda lì.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno.
Io il film l'ho visto stamattina e mi chiedevo se il protagonista Enea e il suo migliore amico, no? Siccome poi ci sono diversi tipi di messaggi, metafore, cioè sono bisessuali.
Sono?
Bisessuali.
Vabbè, mi hai sorpreso più del finale d'Enea. Ma credo che insomma, la questione è un'altra, cioè la questione è la verità, cioè cercano di creare un mondo dove si possano sentire vivi, insomma, e quindi di creare un mondo dove, insomma, dove baci possano tornare a esistere. E per fare questo, insomma, sono quasi disposti a tutto. E tra di loro c'è sicuramente un mistero che li lega.
Un forte legame.
Un fortissimo legame. Che sconfina nell'amore, proprio perché sono mossi da un desiderio incorruttibile, che è quello che muove l'amore, quindi c'è sicuramente amore tra loro due, come c'è amore tra Eva ed Enea, tra me e Giorgio Montanini.
Ok, grazie.
Grazie.
Io avevo una domanda per Pietro innanzitutto, cioè che emozione è stata dirigere tuo padre in questo film e naturalmente per Sergio che regista ha trovato in Pietro, e poi la seconda cosa invece per Pietro vorrei che ci parlassi un attimo del lavoro che fai sulle musiche, perché qui mi sembra che hai alzato l'asticella in questo senso, e c'è anche un lavoro su scelte appartenenti alla tradizione popolare italiana, però spiazzanti, usate in maniera originale, che poi creano anche il tono grottesco, surreale e totalmente avulso da molte cose che si vedono di solito nel cinema italiano. Quindi volevo sapere se le musiche per te erano una chiave d'accesso anche per trovare la tua voce e per concepire le sequenze.
Sì, grazie. Partendo dalla fine, le musiche sì, sono molto importanti. A prescindere dalle musiche, insomma, di repertorio, credo che siano anche molto belle quelle che ha fatto Niccolò Contessa, le musiche originali del film sono molto belle. E sulle musiche, insomma, la scelta è sempre molto istintiva, insomma, poi uno deve anche fidarsi del proprio termometro emotivo. Sono entrambi, sia Maledetta Primavera che Spiagge sono canzoni, soprattutto Maledetta Primavera, a cui ho tanti ricordi legati alla gioventù, perché era una canzone che si cantava molto allo stadio, c'è un coro della Roma famoso, e Spiagge anche, ma mi si sente? Okay.
Sì,
no, perché se no ripete tutto, ragazzi. E quindi Spiagge anche, insomma, era una canzone che credo racchiuda molti elementi del film, la nostalgia, la giovinezza, la voglia di vivere, l'estate che finisce. E poi la prima domanda era su papà?
Mm-hmm.
Sei sicuro? No, allora, insomma, anche qui ho provato in tutti i modi a non fare un film con mio padre. Per quanto sapevo che, insomma, che poi il personaggio di Celeste si muoveva su una frequenza emotiva ironica che nessuno come mio padre avrebbe intercettato, forse Adam Driver, no scherzo, battuta. Scusate, ho sbagliato, poi me ne battuta. E quindi appunto, però poi insomma è anche un mestiere psicologico, quindi ho cercato altre strade, però poi insomma una sera mi convinsi, lo chiamai timidamente, io mi addormento molto tardi, lui si addormenta molto presto, era l'una, per me era prestissimo, lo chiamai e disse va, tu saresti libero a settembre, e lui mi rispose fanculo, sto a dormire. Questa fu e riattaccò, era un sì. E niente, questo è qua. Poi ho scoperto una cosa, che poi alla fine girandoci le persone, ma questo a parlare solo io, mi dispiace, una cosa imbarazzante, le persone poi negli ambienti più formali, nei contesti più formali le comprendi meglio, no? Perché le vedi fuori dall'intimità e vedi come si relazionano col mondo mettendo da parte tutto il loro vissuto che tu conosci, quindi è stato un modo per comprenderci, credo. Mo basta domande a me, grazie.
La domanda era anche per Sergio, sì.
Sì, no, io mi ricordo che tempo prima di quella telefonata notturna ero andato su IMDb, sai il portale quello che... scoprì che ero accreditato per 99 titoli e quando lui mi propose il film mi resi conto che il film che avrei fatto con lui sarebbe stato il 100°. E questo mi è sembrato, come dire, un amorevole segno. Io credo molto in questi segni un po' romantici, un po' casuali. Il 100° significa che dovrò azzerare il contatore e fare i successivi 100, insomma, se regge la pompa. Poi alla fine ho fatto il film con grande... È stata come dire, una relazione molto tranquilla, molto sorgiva, senza doppi fondi, Ho fatto questo film come ho fatto gli altri 99, cioè obbedendo al disegno, diciamo così, poetico, al percorso che il regista mi aveva indicato e come ho fatto gli altri 99 quando potevo, tradendolo, che è quello che un bravo attore dovrebbe fare, insomma, mettere qua e là delle bombe che poi sorprendono il regista e così via.
Tagliate tutte. Tagliate tutte.
Non è vero, non è vero, non è vero. No, tenute tutte. Detto questo mi piacerebbe fare un discorso velocissimo sulla... È chiaro che insomma, la relazione per me, che sono il padre, è una relazione emotivamente particolare, però insomma, come ho detto, insomma, abbastanza semplice, abbastanza sorgiva, abbastanza naturale. Noi parliamo di questo film come il secondo film di Pietro, no? Io mi permetto di, come si dice, di offrire una chiave di lettura un pochino più, insomma, diversa. Per me questo è la fine di una trilogia, secondo me, di Pietro. Nel senso che Pietro comincia 10 anni fa, perché sono testimone essendo il padre, lui ha cominciato a scrivere 10-11 anni fa e scrive I Predatori.
Sì.
Prima?
No.
Dopo I Predatori c'è questa digressione nella letteratura, no? Con gli iperborei, e poi rientra dentro al cinema con questo film. Secondo me c'è come una chiusura dei conti con questo percorso qua, tant'è che penso che lui dovrebbe pensare al quarto film più che al terzo, cioè andare oltre come abito mentale. L'ultima cosa che volevo dire, e poi non parlerò più, è che la cosa che mi appassiona di questo film è il sentimento che Pietro è riuscito a mettere dentro queste 2 stagioni dell'esistenza, più che generazione. La generazione è una parola un po' così che rimanda a qualcosa di sociologico. Secondo me parlerei di stagioni della vita, la giovinezza, la vecchiaia, l'età adulta, l'età matura, chiamatela come vi pare. E c'è una generazione di adulti, in particolare i suoi genitori, che sono persone molto per bene, però crepati dentro, in qualche misura falliti, no? Come dire, a controcampo, a fronte invece di una generazione di giovani che sono molto per male, che però hanno la potenza e la forza di cercare ancora di essere romantici e tragici. Questo li rende più leali dei loro genitori. Credo che questa sia una delle cose più belle che il racconto del film mette in scena. Finito.
Approfitto di quello che diceva Sergio sul lavoro con Pietro per chiedere agli attori e agli altri attori che cosa invece li ha appassionato loro di questo film, dei rispettivi personaggi e anche della quotidianità sul set del lavoro con Pietro, che il regista hanno trovato, che il regista hanno scoperto. Benedetta, vuoi cominciare tu?
Sì, è stato un lavoro per me molto felice, devo dire. Era un film complicato, coraggioso e devo dire mi sono molto affidata a questo quadro così preciso e allo stesso tempo sfumato che Pietro ha disegnato sulla carta, nel quale poi ci ha accompagnato durante le riprese e penso che sia un film molto emozionante con una stratificazione di storie. Quando io ho visto il film in realtà non mi ricordavo esattamente tutte le dinamiche di tutto quello che succedeva e sono stata proprio travolta in una dimensione unica, specifica di questo ENEA che ci, come dire, ci fa vivere a tutti noi questo conflitto, questa difficoltà di fare i conti con la vita, la difficoltà anche di amare, perché poi appunto è un film che racconta molto anche di questi legami profondi fra Eva ed Enea, fra Enea e Valentino. Insomma, questi conflitti di questi personaggi, secondo me, come diceva anche giustamente Sergio, in tutte le varie fasi della vita sono molto d'impatto, sono molto realistiche in un quadro che è però metaforico, diciamo da qualche parte anche con dei rimandi anche grotteschi, dove c'è questa iperbole che diventa quasi una favola nera a un certo punto, però radicato invece su dei valori, su dei principi che conosciamo bene. Ecco, è la generazione che poi raccontiamo, a proposito di generazione, e la Roma che viene raccontata nel film è una Roma anche inedita per quanto mi riguarda, con delle cose che effettivamente ci ricordano la Roma che conosciamo, ma con degli spiragli e degli squarci di una Roma che io sinceramente ho molto amato in questo film, nonostante fosse insomma, claustrofobica e difficile, però anche con uno sguardo accogliente, da qualche parte come se fosse una culla dove questi personaggi cercano ognuno di sopportare la vita, ecco.
Chiara.
Chiara.
Buonasera a tutti. Allora, torno un attimo a bomba riguardo al fatto di trova l'intruso, no? L'intruso ero io nella famiglia, perché ci siamo ritrovati a girare per esempio la scena a cena, eravamo io, Sergio, Cesare e Pietro. E io mi sono adattata e sono stata incastrata in questa famiglia con grande libertà. Libertà è la parola che mi viene. Per come Pietro mi ha condotto con molta grazia ad ottenere quello che voleva, sperando che lo l'abbia ottenuto. Il film, secondo me, rende tematiche molto, molto struggenti con grande eleganza, delicatezza e classe. E quindi io sono molto... Ho avuto modo di poter esprimere tutto quello che erano le mie le difficoltà. Io non sono un genitore, quindi era stata la prima madre che ho mai fatto al cinema. E quindi è stato bellissimo, bellissimo e riduttivo. Ho potuto comprimere tutto quello che era successo nella mia vita, cercando di sembrare una persona che vuole essere un modello genitoriale e purtroppo fallisce, non ci riesce. Mi ritengo una persona molto fortunata di far parte di questo film. Grazie. Matteo.
Io sono molto emozionato a far parte di questo gruppo fantastico. Questo è un sogno e questo regista pazzo e visionario che mi dà questo ruolo completamente diverso. Grazie.
Grazie a te.
Per festeggiare. Per me è stato liberatorio interpretare Gabriel e Pietro mi ha dato una possibilità di andare un po' a briglie sciolte, mi ha chiesto anche ogni tanto di improvvisare è stato ovviamente un lavoro fantastico.
La sceneggiatura non esiste in realtà.
No, in realtà lui ha mandato, sì. No, poi quando ha deciso che Gabriel doveva avere quest'occhio, io non porto neanche lenti a contatto, quindi mi sono spaventato molto, ho detto devo fare tutto il film con occhio solo, perché non vedevo da un occhio, ho detto ogni tanto intruppavo sul set e qua e là, però insomma è un sogno stare qua.
Bravo Matteo.
E Giorgio?
Beh, è stata una grande emozione lavorare con Pietro Castellitto, è stato un onore, diciamo, ho trovato un amico anche nella sua famiglia, ho trovato delle persone davvero meravigliose, quindi il più grande complimento che ti posso fare è dirti che lavorare con te è stato facile. Grazie. Perché veramente mi ha messo tutti quanti a proprio agio, mi dicevi sempre stai sereno. Poi lui è un genio ironico, mi ricordo una volta stavamo girando questa scena in un locale di Roma, c'erano 400 comparse, si stava morendo di freddo, erano le 2 di notte e lui voleva questa scena di discoteca molto, diciamo, agitata e le persone stavano morendo di freddo, non ce la facevano, avevano mangiato un panino. Allora lui a un certo punto ha preso un microfono e ha urlato con tutta la sua forza: siamo o non siamo una generazione di merda? E allora a 200 e poi è partita Freed from Desire a tempo giusto, sono tutti impazziti e la scena è venuta clamorosamente.
Posso veramente, insomma, io questo è un film di personaggi e quindi devo praticamente tutto agli attori. E io ho sempre pensato che quando incontri un attore è più importante il caffè che ti prendi prima del provino che non il provino. Con Giorgio abbiamo fatto tanti
caffè su caffè.
Caffè su caffè dopo bottiglie di vino su bottiglie. Ed è importante relazionarsi, incontrare persone che abbiano questo mestiere dove il talento lo crea la personalità, quindi è importante lavorare con persone che abbiano filtrato le esperienze della vita in maniera personale. Questo è fondamentale. E io ho avuto la fortuna di lavorare con attori che questo l'avevano fatto, che avevano la vita dentro, e in prima fila ci sono 2 attori che dentro hanno un mondo, che sono Giorgio Montani e Adamo Dionisi. Non so se volete dire qualcosa sarebbe, però insomma. E che altro? Possiamo dare un microfono?
Microfono? Giorgio?
Perché non è scontato, spesso incontri dei ventriloqui al posto degli attori, gente che è abitata da una rabbia che non è la loro, che si indignano tutti per le stesse cose, invece Giorgio e Adamo sono pieni di mistero.
Niente, io grazie per la parola che è così a tradimento, però no, volevo dire che in un cinema fatto sempre di algoritmi e parametri che sono più validi per vendere aspirapolveri che per l'arte, Pietro è per me più come un Tarantino che esalta gli attori a prescindere, quindi penso che il merito sia suo piuttosto che nostro, credo. Scusate se parlo un po' come Gatto Silvestro, ma c'è un apparecchio ortodontico.
No, vabbè.
Scusate, lo dico, se uno dice parla male, no, è che ho una cosa... E sono bisessuale, questo volevo dire. Grazie.
Allora, grazie a tutti innanzitutto. È un po' particolare questa storia con Pietro perché ci siamo empaticamente presi subito senza parlare. Fondamentalmente stavamo facendo il provino, io mi ricordo una cosa, che mentre parlavo mi guarda, vai di flusso, quindi lì ci siamo agganciati empaticamente, io non sono più uscito da quella cosa. È stato chiarissimo. A parte è geniale a mio avviso perché riusciva a fare delle cose, stavamo recitando insieme, controllava la regia, quindi... E poi Pietro gliel'ho detto ieri sera, tu hai la favilla negli occhi, quindi non perdi mai nulla, ma non solo non perdi nulla, resti coerente nel modo in cui dai amicizia alle persone, perché questo è stato un film... Secondo me è un film per tutti sull'amicizia, è una grandissima storia d'amore e di passione, perché fra i gangster esiste un amore viscerale, che per tornare a casa hai bisogno di chi hai vicino, se no non torni più a casa e viceversa. Quindi secondo me nel film commovente da morire scritto in una maniera, ha usato tantissimo, io ho visto delle cose che a me sono piaciute tantissimo, cioè è un film che mi rende orgoglioso, nel senso ho potuto partecipare e soprattutto per la prima volta ho visto delle cose nuove in me, che vengono un po' da quella roba che dici tu, no? L'ultima cosa che hai fatto, poi fai dei percorsi e quindi sono arrivato magari senza accorgermi, però ho avuto la facilità di farlo tradendo da mestierante alcune cose, ma sapevo che Pietro già conosceva. E poi lo ringrazio per la battuta dell'albero, perché io quelle le dico così di default e quindi ora me la ritrovo. Grazie a tutti. Era questo.
Allora, che questo sia il secondo o il terzo film di Pietro, poi capiremo bene. Volevo chiedere a Lorenzo Miele e a Massimiliano Orfei che percorso di crescita c'è stato rispetto ai Predatori, per che cosa vi ha appassionato di questo film, di cosa vi ha parlato questa storia?
Vai tu? Vado io. Ma non posso io parlare del percorso di crescita di Pietro, assolutamente. So solo che lo stimavo tantissimo, l'ho stimato enormemente quando ho visto I Predatori e quando ho letto il suo libro. Avevo gran voglia di lavorare con lui, poi per via di Luca Guadagnino, che è qui, mi è arrivata la possibilità di leggere la sceneggiatura di questo film e mi sono innamorato della sceneggiatura, perché Pietro è un grande scrittore, è un bravissimo regista, questa è un'opera seconda o terza o quarta, non lo so, ma è un'opera, è veramente un'opera. E quello che io ho trovato nella scrittura era una cosa che da produttore cercavo da anni, cioè la possibilità di raccontare con un punto di vista, con uno sguardo veramente nuovo, di un'altra generazione o di un'altra epoca della vita o fase della vita, quel mistero diciamo, che c'è fra appunto il nichilismo e il romanticismo nei ragazzi. Ed era centrato in una maniera tutta sua, tutta proprio che non mi ha catturato, in cui sono entrato. Quindi ho voluto fortemente fare questo film, sono fierissimo di averlo fatto. Spero e credo che tutti abbiamo dato a Pietro la libertà di cui aveva bisogno, di cui ha bisogno un autore quando fa un film. E di questo poi voglio ringraziare anche Massimiliano Orfei e Vision, perché sono entrati da subito in questa avventura con noi. Voglio ringraziare poi quindi anche Luca e voglio ringraziare anche poi particolarmente Valentina Venia, che l'ha prodotto con me di fatto dall'inizio alla fine, e spero che di essere stati una famiglia per la famiglia di Enea.
Cosa abbiamo visto in questo film? Beh, noi quello che abbiamo visto è il futuro del cinema italiano, quello che stiamo cercando è di rinnovarlo e in Pietro c'è uno sguardo che noi fatichiamo a trovare in altri talenti. Secondo noi qui siamo all'inizio di un percorso nuovo per il cinema italiano di cui Pietro sarà protagonista. Io sono particolarmente contento di aver fatto questo film, di averlo fatto insieme a Lorenzo, è il terzo film che abbiamo qui insieme, quindi c'è tra Vision di Apartment, il gruppo Fremantle, una relazione veramente molto solida. Il film uscirà il 25 gennaio in Italia, quindi una data importantissima da grande film, e chiudo semplicemente dicendo che con Lorenzo ci siamo detti subito, dopo aver letto la sceneggiatura, questo film non possiamo non farlo e dobbiamo farlo dando a Pietro tutto quello che serve perché abbia la libertà e le risorse per farlo al meglio.
Grazie. Ed è stato... No, insomma, si dice sempre, no? Pochi produttori in Italia avrebbero dato questi mezzi, avrebbero avuto il coraggio. Io in questo caso pochi produttori al mondo, ci tengo a dirlo proprio. Quindi, insomma, avrebbero avuto il coraggio e forse la serenità spirituale di dare così tanti mezzi e di rendere così ufficiale uno spaccato tragico che era molto intimo. Quindi grazie a Lorenzo Mieli, grazie a tutti i finanziatori, grazie a Massimiliano, Vision, Luca, Valentina, Andrea, grazie a tutti.
E ci fermiamo qui, grazie a tutti voi, grazie mille.
Permettetemi di dire un grazie personale a mio figlio Cesare Castellitto.
È vero, sei grande Cesare.
Sono bravissimi.
Grande.
Ti hanno tirato, reggiseno?
Guarda.
Sì, ragazzi, ecco, arriviamo.